Hi students, this is Eric here with some additional content for you on chords in the key of E. If you're receiving this video, it's because you already learned some things about the chords in the key of E. If you weren't here for those lessons, well, lucky you, you get to benefit from my mistake and you get this additional content anyway. So what we covered in the key of E chords is this idea of a movable shape or a movable grip, however you want to look at it. So it's basically you grip one chord shape and you move, you kind of glide your hand from the elbow movement back here while keeping your fingers kind of locked. And that's really cool because it makes these big full sounding chords. So the first movable grip that we talked about was the E major grip, which is basically you're going to take your second finger, your middle finger, and you're going to put it on the second fret of the A string, and then my third finger goes also on the second fret but on the D string, index finger is going on the first fret of the G string, and we have that grip. So I'm going through here pretty quickly because, again, this should be review, and I just wanted to keep it fresh in your mind because it's some really neat stuff that you'll never really outgrow because it's always going to sound cool. So there's the E grip. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move it up to an A chord by moving this cluster of fingers here respectively to the 7th and 6th fret. So I'm staring at this cluster of fingers, so I'm going to move this cluster here to the 7th fret, and then the index finger is just going to kind of come along. And I'm going to pull this movement from my elbow and just kind of glide up. So what I did is I just kind of relaxed my fingers. I didn't lift off. I just relaxed and then glide. When I move this up, this is one of those rare instances where you can still hit every single string on the guitar and it sounds really cool. It gives me this very nice sounding A chord. It's an A with an added ninth in it. And if that's an A, I can move this whole grip up a whole step and get a B as well. And I'm playing all of the strings. So that's the really neat thing about the key of E major, is that I can use these droning open strings. Open string number 1, which is an E note, and open string number 2, which is a B note, can drone for any of the chords in the key of E, because that's just the way that it works, that E and B are kind of your most important notes in the key of E. So it works out really well, so I can keep strumming these open strings. And that's kind of where our idea came from for the lesson content this month, is just including open strings to make some neat sounding chords that you can't really get otherwise. So here is an E chord. I'm going to slide that up to the 7th fret, right, 7th fret with these fingers, not the index finger, and then up to the 9th fret to get a B. And then the other grip we learned, which is kind of the minor form of that, is where I'm going to use this, what I call the finger clump. And I'm clumping together my pinky and my ring finger. So just a review of what that is that's not a technical term. A finger clump is just a clump of fingers that I'm pushing together and mashing together so that they stay together. So that finger clump basically works by taking the fingerprint of your ring finger and then letting it touch the nail of your pinky finger, kind of like that. So then now I'm going to apply a little bit of inward force so that these fingers stay together, and I don't have to worry about constantly refretting and rebending them and making sure I have the right angle. So when I'm playing this correctly, I'm going to make sure that my fingers aren't flat and out this way because it's going to get in the way. So I have this big arch here. It's almost like my fingers would be making the letter C. It's this big arch up and over the strings because, like I said a moment ago, I want those open strings in there. So the minor form is going to take the finger clump and it's going to put it on the 5th string and the 4th string. I'm doing this at the 4th fret. Okay, so there's my finger clump on the 5th and 4th. And I'm going to bring in my index finger and it's going to land on the 2nd fret. So it's leaving this space in between. My middle finger isn't really doing anything, it's just kind of relaxing, and I'm using it as a visual reference to make sure that these two fingers are spaced appropriately. So even though this middle finger isn't doing anything, if you wanted to, you can just kind of hover it above, don't hold down any frets, but hover it above the fret in between your clump an index finger just to make sure that you don't accidentally squeeze in, because that would give us a major shape. We don't want the major shape, we want the minor shape, okay? So this is movable from the 4th fret to the 6th fret and the 11th fret. Here I am at an 11th fret, and this is giving me a C sharp minor kind of vibe. Okay, if I move it down to the 6th fret, that's giving me kind of a G sharp minor feel. And then down, there's the 4th fret, that's giving me an F sharp minor vibe. So then what we worked on is combining both. Here's a minor to a major. So I'm keeping this clump this time, and I'm using a different fingering. When I'm combining both major and minors, I find it easier to just keep this clump together and play that major chord like that. So that way I have, this would be an A minor, here's an A major. Minor, major, minor, major. So that's the only difference. So here I have an E major. I'll re-grip it using my finger clump here. That's 3rd finger, 4th finger, 2nd finger. My index finger is free because I'm just going to keep sliding this up and alternating between my middle finger and my index finger as needed. So if I'm playing in the key of E, what I have is the first chord is major. If you remember the house system, the first house is a 2-story house, so it's going to be major. The next house will be a minor chord, okay? 1-story house, and it's built on F sharp. Then I'm going to move up to G sharp minor. Then again, using the house system, it's a 2-story house, so it's a major chord up next. A major, B major, C sharp minor, and then we're just going to avoid that 7th note for now. So. The last shape that we use that's movable, and it sounds totally cool, is the power chord grip. So the power chord grip should feel almost identical to the one that you just played. We're just inverting the fingers. So here's what I mean, is this was the F sharp minor chord where I have my finger clump at the 4th fret, and then my index finger here is 2 strings below at the 2nd fret. So I'm going to invert it now. So the index finger is going to come forward to the 5th string, and then my finger clump is going to go down towards the floor by 1 grouping of strings. So I have 2nd fret, 5th string, and then my finger clump on the 4th fret of both the 4th and 3rd strings. And I'm still including the open strings. I'm going to leave out the thick string here because now it's going to kind of get muddy. This will work as long as I'm tracking how the chords move. So we would have to know how to build our chords here. I'm just going to tell you, it works at the 2nd fret, 4th fret, 6, 7, 9, and 11. That sounds very nice. It's totally movable. I'm just including all these open strings on top. They sound really nice. Just make sure that you have a nice hook on your fingers. Those fingers need to get up and over the strings, especially the index finger. I noticed that a lot of students tend to bring their palm, this underside of their palm, into the back of the neck here. And what that does is that'll mute that top string. We don't want that. We want to hear that very pretty E on top. So if your palm's too close, you get this. So we just want to make sure there's enough distance between the inside of my palm and this underside of the guitar neck here. The next thing, should all be reviewed. Those are the 3 chords that we covered throughout the course of the month when we were working on the chords in the key of E. Okay? The next thing that we're going to do is just look at, well, how can I get a good bit of mileage out of one chord? So I'm going to take the power chord grip and I'm going to put it at the 4th and 6th fret here. And this is kind of like a C sharp minor chord. Nothing on the low 6th, 4th fret, 6th fret, 6th fret, open, open. Now instead of always just strumming this big blocky chord, it sounds nice to come up with some sort of picking pattern. So I can drag my pick straight down and then return. You can do whatever you want. You could randomly move your pick. I don't encourage randomness, but it'll sound nice if you, as long as you're hitting a string, it's going to work. So that was random. That was me playing randomly, and it sounded pretty good. So to get some mileage out of this single chord, one thing I can do is strum, and then play single notes, and I can get quiet. I can strum just certain parts of the chord, so here's me just hitting the low end of the chord, and then single notes. So I'm getting kind of 3 strings down there just by digging inward with my pick. Kind of digging in to just get 3 notes. So it's almost like a down swipe. You can do whatever you want. So that's only half of the idea. Don't get bogged down into too many different ways to pick this. The other thing that you can do is start to lift up the index finger. And it kind of turns into this nice neat little thing where I get C sharp minor 7 into like an A6 kind of thing going on here by simply lifting up my index finger. So here's the C sharp minor, here's an A type of chord. All I'm doing is taking this finger on and off. And I'm exaggerating this movement here so you can see how simple it really is. Simple doesn't always mean easy, because remember, we have to hook these fingers up and over and make sure that we're not accidentally deadening strings by flat joints here. So we can do some cool stuff here. And then something else you can do is that exact same idea down here at this B major type of chord with the 11th added in. So here it's the C minor, C sharp minor, to an A type of chord. And I'm going to do that exact same hand stuff down 2 frets. Here it is, it's B to some type of A. Okay? So I got a little bit too random there and I hit some of that low 6th string, but it sounds fine. So easy in terms of remembering how to do that. I just play a C sharp minor power chord shape with my finger clumped down here. Strum the chord, lifted my finger off, left my finger off, pulled my hand down near that B area, and then I came back down. So here's a fingers on, fingers off, slide back a whole step, fingers still off, finger comes down. So that's a fun idea that you can take there. If you know your way well around the E major scale as a whole across all of the strings, really all I'm doing is kind of keeping a constant droning of a chord grip while only changing the bass note. The bass note being the lowest note. So the more you know about the key of E, the more you can expand these chords. So I'm not going to get too deep into where I'm getting these notes from or the E major scale. But I will tell you I can get 4, 2, and 0 on both the A string and the low E string. It'll work. So Now I'm going to get a 4 on the low E string. Now I'm going to go to the open A. Now I'm going to slide down a whole step and do that same idea. First finger's down on a B on the A string. Now I'm going to reach forward and get an F sharp here. An open E. Open A. So now I can kind of combine all that. So that was just kind of a random pattern, and it sounds pretty nice. All I'm really doing is using one chord shape that's just bouncing back and forth by a whole step. Where all of the movement is coming from is just my index finger either playing on the A string or the E string, and then either fretting or not fretting. All right, so it's either 4 here or 4 there, or open on either string, and it's either 2 here or 2 there, open on either string. Okay, that is more or less a review of everything that we would have covered in that E major lesson. And again, I don't want you to forget about this stuff. Just because we're not immediately focusing on it right now in your lessons doesn't mean that it's not a really cool, neat thing to do. This is one of those go-to things where, like, you're over at a friend's house or you're jamming at a campfire or something, and someone says, "Oh, hey, why don't you play me something?" This is one of those things, if you just practice it loosely once or twice a week, you're going to be able to pick up the guitar and sound good. And it's more or less improvisational. You're just moving a couple of concepts around. So that was a very quick, very loose, unrehearsed improvisation of all of the concepts that I just talked about in this short video bonus lesson. I covered the E grip, and I moved it up to A and B, and I used the same minor grip, and then I inverted it, used it the power chord grip, and then I used the neighboring note thing. So there's a great way to practice it. Write out an exercise using these concepts. It's nice to hold yourself accountable to some absolute. That way you know if you're being correct or not, and you hold yourself accountable to timing, because that's important. If you want a real example of this very concept, there's a Dave Matthews song that is going to take this very same idea, and it's going to use a similar chord grip and similar notes that we looked at. So the Dave Matthews song is Crash Into Me, and it's taking a modified power chord grip, where the idea here is I'm going to get a power chord, just a 2-note power chord, with my index finger and my pinky. Okay, my index finger is now on the 4th string, and my pinky is on the 3rd string. And what you're going to get is kind of a unison drone, and I'm not in perfect tune, but we're going to pretend that I am. You kind of have this unison drone between these two strings here, so that sounds pretty nice there. And if you strum the top 4 strings, here's what you get. So that's that solid, stable, never moves top end of the chord. The rest, all that's going to happen below that is I'm just going to change some bass notes. That's the idea. Make sure that you can, strum that rhythm. So I would practice that, and then the movement of the notes is simple. Simple in that it's easy to remember, and you can kind of see how it moves through the E major scale. When you put it all together, it does require a bit of finger pretzeling, because you keep this droning chord while playing 0s, 4s, and 2s. The 2s aren't too bad, the 0s quite easy. It's just tricky to get these 4s because you run into this finger independence exercise here. in that I'm keeping my first finger and my pinky finger stationary while the third finger has to change. Okay, so you can see a real practical application of why I need to be able to do this finger independence exercise. So how the song is going to move, while holding down these chords, I'm going to play the 4th fret of the A string. And then I'll let go of that note, and then I'm going to do the same thing. So I have a 4 followed by an open. If you can get this movement down by slamming down your ring finger and picking it up while maintaining constant pressure here between these two fingers, you've got it. This is a great warm-up for students that want to work on the finger independence exercise and don't always want to do this grueling, labor-intensive type of exercise. This is a practical thing to do. So maybe you just want to work on the first 2 chords if you've never done anything like this before. 4th fret, open string. Now I'm going to bring my index finger forward and get a twofer. A twofer meaning I still need this note, but I also need this note in that low end to keep a melody going. So when I say this note, I mean I need to be able to play the 2nd fret of the 4th string and the 2nd fret of the 5th string. So we get this. Now here is one example that I do want my finger to buckle. I'm leaning against the corner of my finger, it's going to buckle, and this is going to allow me to get a small bar but not cover up these top strings. Again, this is a bit of a finger pretzel. The notes are simple. The notes are 4, 0, 2, and now I'm going to play some notes on the E string. Low E, 4. So it's 4 on the A, open on the A, 2 on the A, open 6th, 4 on the 6th, quick open on the A, 2 on the A, and then an open E. So you got. So I would practice that separately the way that I just played it. It's going to take a bit to get the finger independence, but it's a fun sounding song. It's applying this very concept that we worked on this month of chords in the key of E, that's droning the open strings, keeping a solid, stable chord grip as I have this bass line moving around a solid, stationary chord grip. So that's the idea. I'll include some tab for the song if you want to work on it. Again, this wouldn't be something that I would expect most late beginners or even early intermediate students to get immediately. It is a bit of a finger pretzel. So work on it if you like the song. Again, it's a really cool concept. You don't have to learn the song. You can just take the concept and come up with your own thing, and that would be way cooler, and I'd love to hear it. So if you want some feedback, take a video of you playing either the Dave Matthews song or you writing something, improvising with these chords. Send it to me. I'd love to see it. All right, enjoy.